The Italian Renaissance by Cherry Sullivan. The Italian Renaissance was a unique time of great cultural achievement and one of the most exciting periods of civilization. Italian thinkers began living in a new age that they called Rinascita, which means rebirth. This also happens to be the meaning of Renaissance. The Italian Renaissance began in the 14th century in Florence, Italy, and lasted until about 1600. It was a time of learning new art, new culture, and literature. Italians also pursued an interest in classical antiques. From a cultural view, the Renaissance did not change much. Northern Italy was the most urbanized area of Europe. Other cities were dominated by a commercial elite. This area was the main audience of the Renaissance. The Renaissance did less social and economic change and more ideological development. There were many great figures during this time, such as Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Machiavelli, Raphael, Filippo Brunelleschi, and many others. Wealthy Florentines became patrons of local artists and intellectuals. Florence became the cultural center of Europe and of the Renaissance. Renaissance thinkers and writers studied antiques all around Italy. They also rediscovered Roman and Greek texts. Literature and poetry helped form the Renaissance. Niccolo Machiavelli was a well-known author. He wrote The Prince, a 16th century political work. Many classics were from studying Latin and Greek. A lot of Renaissance writers managed to incorporate ancient works into their own. Science and philosophy had a great impact on Renaissance literature and poetry. A successful poet by the name of Francesco Petrarch published several works of poetry during this time. He is well known for his collection of love sonnets, the Canzoniere. He mainly wrote in Latin, which were later translated to English by Thomas Wyatt. Giovanni Boccaccio, Petrarch's disciple, was also a well-known author. Decameron was one of his major works. Many of Boccaccio's works were an inspiration to English Renaissance writers such as William Shakespeare. Petrarch was also known for being the founder of humanism. Humanism was a big thing with the projects that were sponsored. Humanism is the individual, beauty, reason, and secular values. Petrarch valued the concept of individuality. This idea rejected the human Catholic Church's vision. The Roman Catholics believed souls were the only absolute reality. Humanism's concept was that man was good by nature, whereas the Christians viewed man as a sinner. This concept provoked several people to question God and spirituality. It also provided for more knowledge. Human principles were included in the work of architect Filippo Brunelleschi as well. He applied elements of classical Roman architecture to his work. One of his major works was built at the Santa Maria del Fiore Cathedral in Florence. It's 144 feet across and weighs about 37,000 tons. He also created a way to paint and draw using linear perspective. He learned to paint from the perspective of the person looking at the painting in order for space to appear. Leone Battista Alberti, another artist, explained principles of linear perspective, and it then became one of the most noteworthy elements. Almost all of the Renaissance paintings included linear perspective. Sculpture and painting was major during the Renaissance also. Painting began in Florence and Tuscany. 2- and 3-dimensional paintings were introduced by Piero della Francesca and Pablo Uccello. Piero della Francesca also wrote a disquisition based on scientific perspective. Donatello was well known for his sculptures. He studied classical sculptures and subject matter. Donatello was very influential because of this. Michelangelo, also known as the Greatest, sculpted a work called David, which is seen to be more natural than the sculpture of Donatello. Michelangelo also includes more emotion in his sculptures. Leonardo da Vinci was most known for The Last Supper and the Mona Lisa. Another subject that was popular was architecture. The dome in St. Peter's Basilica was done by Michelangelo. He was an architect and poet. Science and technology was majored during the Renaissance. Intellectuals were focused on trying to understand the laws of nature and physical world. Artist Leonardo da Vinci created scientific studies of objects. He discovered that all objects fall at the same acceleration. Mathematician and scientist Galileo Galilei studied natural law. Galileo built a telescope that was able to determine that Earth and all other planets revolved around the sun. The most significant development of technology happened in Germany by Johannes Gutenberg. He invented the mechanical, movable type printing press in the middle of the 15th century. This allowed for many books to be made. The Medici family in Florence sponsored many projects. Cosimo de' Medici was a highly popular and important patron of the arts. As he got older, the reign of power was passed to his grandson, Lorenzo. He was known as Lorenzo the Magnificent and also one of the most important patrons. Italy began to be torn apart by the end of the 15th century. The Mediterranean economy declined. There were new trade routes in the Atlantic and fewer in the Mediterranean. This also meant there was less money being spent on art and education. This resulted in a negative impact on the Renaissance. Spanish also came over and dominated the city-states. Writers and thinkers began to have less freedom. These were some of the factors that caused the end of the Renaissance. Thank you.